All right, we are back. Look at that. We shut her down at about 1:30 last night, and here we are, bright and early, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And I have Boxcast lined up for a broadcast. I did not program Rumble because I did not have enough time today to do that. But once the show is complete on Boxcast, I will put it up on Rumble. So today it's just the Boxcast portion of 15 minutes of flame. And I didn't even do a chart for the weather yet. Let me do that. Let me do that. As you might have guessed, I just got up about a half an hour ago. Actually 45 minutes ago. So last night, man, that was just fucking epic. 10 hours of live streaming, and then David coming in for the last 5.5 hours. It was just incredible. Really incredible. Just dynamic, high level information exchange. He was so on his game last night. It was really awesome. And we're going to be hooking up again here soon, right in the aftermath, the afterglow of the of what happened last night. We have a lot to talk about, and I'm going to do a lot of the talking about last night on 15 minutes, but clearly we'll get into it here, especially as it relates to the astrology. And one of the things that David and I talked about was just how, like, if you just really did the basic astrological math, that's all you had to do, just do the basic astrological math and look at what was going on with Jupiter and a lot of these, just I wouldn't call them simple, but fundamental, like just fundamental transits that were happening in both charts. The math was easy. It was like, with Jupiter retrograding back into Harris's 12th house, I think that was just not a good moment for Harris. I mean, it was clear. It was, very, very clear that it didn't even get to her ascendant. I mean, this is what we talked about last night. Like, it didn't even, like, it threatened her ascendant and didn't even get there. And before it gets to her ascendant, boom, it's in her 12th house. And now all of a sudden she's got Jupiter retrograde in her 12th house. And it might have been perhaps an adequate transit for affecting the election, in ways that the hidden hand might have had some greater influence with, but it did not happen last night. And I guess when we get over to 15, I'll get into this more. But there was a huge amount of money that went into the Harris campaign. Huge. On TV. And when I did watch a station that had ads, like I mean, they were running Kamala Harris ads on NBA games and football games, which is about the only thing I watch on network TV. And there were quite a few. I mean, I can't lie. And all the YouTube ads. I mean, there was a huge advertising push for Harris. So there was a lot of money that was being spent in that direction. Now, does the money for the ads add up to how much went into the Harris coffers? No, because she had close to $500 million. I mean, there was a serious amount of money that went into Harris. Okay, so you're thinking, what are they going to use that money for besides these quote unquote ads? Well, we know that they were bussing people in. Like they were busing people into her rallies. That money had to come from somewhere. They had to pay those people to get there. And even though the party line was the Diddy party line, the Diddy party line was that people who were there at the parties were all of a sudden forced to endorse Harris. I think for some of those people, that was true. For perhaps some of the other people, maybe some of that money went in their direction and said, "Okay, here's what you're going to do. We're going to pay you." Like Megan Thee Stallion, like they paid her to be at that event. Beyonce, even though Beyonce's probably at the parties, they probably paid Beyonce. So some of the money went to celebrity endorsements. That's how the game works. But again, does it account for all of it? No, it doesn't account for all of it. So then where did it go? Were they going to use it to throw down with some lawfare and run the steal and just pay off all these local people like I believe what happened in 2020? If they did, it was money ill spent because that didn't happen. So now the question is, where does the money go? Right? Where does the money go? And it was, again, huge, huge, huge amounts of money. And it'll be interesting to just, again, track this thing over the next 3 months. We're talking what, January 20th, right? There's a lot that can happen. And again, there's a lot of money that changed hands. So we'll keep an eye on that. But for a night, and maybe even longer, there's been a very interesting turn of events in the history of the world. I mean, that's really what happened. Like this whole thing is just completely historic, just in terms of what the Trump campaign has done. But not only that, I didn't find the Joe Rogan interview all that interesting. It wasn't like he said anything really profound, or maybe there were a few insightful nuggets. But the thing that I came away with the most from the Rogan interview was the comments and all of these people from countries all over the world that were saying, like Czechoslovakia here and England in the house, and it was just like comment after comment after comment. It wasn't just Americans who were chiming in on this interview, and they were all like pulling for Trump. We're saying a prayer for America. We're saying, because whatever you think of Donald Trump and the machine, this is going to be a very interesting examination on whether or not a person can learn from their mistakes. But when you witness what's going on in Europe and the EU and the utter evil, the EU is it's like the E in the EU stands for evil. Like these people have just they've sold these countries out, and they have allowed them to be populated by people who, I'm sure there are some people who are grateful, and maybe they integrate and they're happy to be there, and they're just like, maybe they're really, really thankful that they're not in sub-Saharan Africa and eating bark or whatever, right? Because that's true. I mean, if you go back into like Somalia and the Lost Boys of Somalia, I mean, they're running around. There's nothing to eat. They're fucking eating bark on trees. I'm not exaggerating. But these people were put into Europe to displace the European population. And if I was Europe, I would be a little nervous right now with Donald Trump as president, because he's one of these guys that can, he can move the needle, and move the needle in a way that clearly Biden, whatever Biden was, wouldn't do, and Harris clearly would not do. We'll get to Harris later. All right, let's check in with you guys. Let's see what we have here. Let's go through some comments. I'm going to take some time today to go through some comments. We got my man Bo is in the house. Christina Jersey, so glad you're broadcasting this morning. It's like, what else am I going to do, right? If it's 8 o'clock in the morning and I can get up and breathe, I'm going to do it. But it's good to see you, Christina. PB's here, Moonsprout is here. Bummed that Rumble was working for me last night, but when I wasn't working. I'm sorry, Bo. Yeah, man, it was great. We had an all-star lineup. And shout out to Mark Malone, who came in and, coming off the heels of remembering his wife. His wife passed away a year ago on Saturday, like such a heavy load. And, you saw him there with his beautiful, cute little daughter. And, he has 2 other children, and such an intense burden was placed on this man. And he came in and just really sliced and diced and was just, brilliant. Mark brought his brilliance, and I'm sure Drake is absolutely ecstatic today. And it was great having, quite frankly, on at the beginning of the show and just checking in with him and setting the table, and all you guys were fueling chat, and it was really a great experience. So different than 2020, and I made a commitment, man. I'm not going to bed until this thing is in the bag, and it worked out all right. Let's see who else we have. Warlanda. Oh, I love this. Seeger bathing in sweet liberal tears. The guy Ian Carroll, this guy, the top guy. He's saying, okay, well, now you get to show how much compassion and how much empathy you have for the left, and how this could look. Those people on the so-called right, like these people here in Texas, the people that vote for Trump again, and these people, they don't really have a bad bone in their body. I mean, I've been around them. They're not vindictive. They don't have a bone to pick with people. They really don't. I mean, this has been my experience, right? Maybe there are some people out there who are looking to get a little schadenfreude. And look, you're allowed a day of schadenfreude. All right, you are allowed a day. You are allowed a day, maybe a few more days than just a day, to have a fucking victory lap. Okay, you're allowed that. So Ian, it's fine. We'll be there. We'll get there. We'll extend the olive branch if they want to take it. But for now, let us have a little moment. My Scorpio rising says, let us have a little moment of schadenfreude, shall we? For me, I have to say, I don't take great pleasure in this. I take a small amount of pleasure, but not great pleasure. The image of Greg Popovich, wherever he is, in his McMansion, and resting up, healing up, getting an IV, the man who chastised the press and slandered Donald Trump and commemorated Kamala Harris and the job that she did in dealing with the cartels. Kamala Harris was run by the fucking cartels. And this is why people like Greg Popovich are dangerous, because he's a coach. He's had great success. He has a platform, and he's able to use his platform unchallenged, by the way, unchallenged, and spew misinformation, lies. He did this 2 weeks before the election. He's a fucking basketball coach. And all of a sudden, he got sick 2 or 3 days ago. He's out indefinitely, and now he's got to deal with the fact that Kamala Harris is not president. And you know what? I got a little schadenfreude in there for that dude. And the same with Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr went to the Democratic National Convention. He made a commitment, right? He got up there, he gave a speech, and at the end of the speech, he did the famous Steph Curry night. And I'm like, Steve, eat shit, because you stepped into the political ring and you decided that you were going to make this. Look, on some level, I give Steve credit, right? Like he actually got out there and committed to it. And on the other hand, on another level, it's like, Steve, you probably should have sat this one out, and now you get to deal with it. So there are a few people. There are just a few people that, yeah, I want to see their crocodile tears. Now, Steve Kerr will never, ever, ever, ever display that in public, but in private, oh, he had a rough night. I'm sure he and Steph Curry were texting last night. Broken hearts, high fives. We'll dedicate the season to Kamala. I'm sorry. All right, let's see. Who else do we have here? I'm not sorry. Let's see. Who do we got? Going all the way back to the beginning. Okay. Sandra Barr, believe cautiously grateful. Man, there you go. That's a pretty good stance, I think, actually. Robert, you're still on. Well, I did take a bit of a break, Susie. I couldn't get to bed last night. I was up till about 3 a.m. And I was watching MSNBC and I was watching CNN, and they were still trying to work out a fucking pathway for Harris to win at 3. I couldn't believe these people. I couldn't believe them. Like they were clinging to anything. I mean, like the gristled ends of hope and despair. I mean, this is what these people were clinging to. I couldn't believe it. It's like, this fucking thing is over. It's over. Get over it. It's done. Right. Then they have here we are in Wisconsin, and about 80% of the vote from North Alice has come in. And, that county has generally really shown up in the past to go blue. Now, if we get 20 more percent of the votes there, she could have, he's working out the fucking algebra on the board, and it's 3 a.m. It's like, bro, it's over. Okay. It's over. I know they're paying you by the hour, and you're gonna milk this thing for whatever you can get out of it. It's over, dude. It's over. All right, let's go. Let's get back into some of these comments. I promise I will get to astrology. Let's see. All right. We left off with Sigurd bathing in sweet liberal tears. We got Warlanda. We did a little Warlanda. I know this brother's happy right here. My man Ryan. He's absolutely thrilled. What's going on, Scott? I will indeed always remember the 5th of November. Right? That's the line. That is the line for V from Vendetta. T. Jordan's in the house. Yeah, I think Rumble was on overload, Bo. Scrubby's here. Long day yesterday. Working the polls. Look at that. That's some Scorpio energy right there. That's impressive, Tamara. Healing Heart Rosie's here with us. Glennis Spank. Fell asleep listening to David and Robert. Woke up to go to bed and listen to Trump speak. There you go. Blue wave of tears. The View will be epic butthurt. Oh my God. You know what's going to happen with The View? I mean, they're going to try to place the blame on Trump for creating an environment of fear and paranoia and misinformation, right? Like that's what's going to happen. They're going to go down that path. But one of the things that I was watching CNN a little bit before the show, and one of the things that they're going to have to come to terms with is, let me see if I can make a correlation here. Have you ever been in a relationship and the relationship is maybe mediocre at best, uh, and not very good at worst, right? And in that relationship, for whatever reason, right? Maybe because all of your friends know about your relationship, but they only know the good parts, right? You only tell them the good parts. You only tell them the parts of what you did on the weekend and where you're going to be going on vacation and right. Like you're not telling them all the other stuff that's going on behind the scenes, but you're only telling them those parts, right? You're just telling them the parts that you want them to hear so that they think that you have a perfect life and you have the perfect relationship when in reality it's really not. And what you're doing is you're trying to convince your friends that there's this, or they're trying to convince their friends that there's this condition that exists that is, ideal or whatever, right? And in reality, it's not. And then you have to come to terms with the fact that you were lying to yourself and you were lying to these other people. And I feel like that's what the so-called left has been doing, that they have been lying to themselves and they've been lying to other people. And last night and part of this morning, what I began to see was the first signs of self reflection. This is really kind of an amazing moment. Like there was a guy who was on CNN. He said, look, at the end of the day, what did people care about? They didn't care about what fucking cereal she ate when she was a kid, right? They didn't care about the brat movement. They didn't care about abortion as the most important right that anybody in the United States of America could have. They didn't care about those things. What they cared about was immigration, was the economy, all the things that have made living in the United States of America harder and harder and harder each and every day, right? Those were the issues that people cared about. Now, Harris said that she was going to, prop up the middle class, and that was going to be her goal, right? That was going to be her goal. She's going to prop up the middle class and take care of all these things that need to be taken care of and lower the cost of food, right? But this is from somebody who hasn't done a goddamn thing in her life. And people have gotten to the point where they can smell the bullshit. They can smell the bullshit cooking on the grill. And at the end of the day, what people really resonated with and wanted to hear were the things that were coming out of Trump and the Trump campaign. And this was coming through CNN. And one of the guys said, look, you know, not only do the people in this party have to have a come to Jesus with the platform, but we in the media have to really take a hard look at what we've been doing, because we weren't listening. We weren't listening to the people that were listening to Trump. We weren't listening. What we were doing is we were broadcasting a message. And the message we were broadcasting, of course, was all these things that were going to happen and break for Harris. This is a very interesting moment in time. This is where Scorpio really comes into play. So let's get into some of the astrology. I'm not going to do a star of the day today due to time constraints. But this is one of the things that Scorpio does. Scorpio is one of these signs that takes you really into the black mirror. I mean, that's like. It is the black mirror moment, and you have to face like your nightmares and your fears and all the things that have been created and created in a way that maybe not have been so conscious or responsible. And the good news here, especially today, with the moon in Capricorn and the sun coming in and sextiling that moon and then trining Saturn, which is the ruler of Capricorn. Look, this is a really good time to have a come to Jesus moment. If you're on that side of the fence, maybe this has all been a sugar high from the start of Obama. It's just been a sugar high, and the so-called liberal progressive left has been riding a sugar high since 2009, and right now it's the sugar crash. It's the sugar crash, and there's going to be a lot of self-reflection going on. And the thing about about astrology is it's pretty agnostic, right? Like it doesn't, especially Scorpio, it doesn't really spare people the process, right? Nobody gets spared with Scorpio. So that's what's in play right now. And if people on the left who are honest with themselves and have been bullshitting themselves and bullshitting the American people and the rest of the world, well, guess what? They have the potential to have a transformative moment. Like, so we're looking at like the day after a major event. Like, this chart is very important. This chart is the imprint of the day after. And when you see the sun here, right, and the sun is in the second decan, so it's in the Piscean decan. And when it's in the Piscean decan, I think it has the most far-reaching potential, right? It gets into, all of these so-called collective energies. It gets into the realm, deep realm of archetypes and dredging up, like, fear. And like, how many people do you think are right now running around thinking that Donald Trump is really going to become Hitler? Like, how many people are still being driven by that program? Like, look, I'm not saying that Trump might not be his own version of a tyrant. Look, this guy's got more political power and clout than anybody since Ronald Reagan in 1980. And, let's hope that he and the people around him steward it wisely. That's the only thing we can, hang our hats on at this point, right? But that said, this is a time where people can transform. This is a transformative moment. It's a transformative moment. And if somebody's on the other side and they're, in tears, and this is the worst day of their life, like, they have the opportunity to maybe self-reflect. And you started to hear this last night and this morning on some of these, CNN and MSNBC. They're really starting to look at, hey, maybe it's time to stop the resistance. Maybe it's time to come to the table and start to work together. They were saying this last night. This is such a radical shift from 2016 and even 2020, when, they were basically handed the election. Radical shift. Now you're starting to hear these pundits saying, hey, look, this is what the people wanted. So maybe, just maybe, we should sit down and have these discussions that are really important. Really, really important. And start to work together. So this is the sun in Scorpio, right? This is the transformative moment. Like, and I think really, honestly, this is what we want. If we're in the government game, right? If we're in the government game, and hopefully what we'll witness ultimately is a stripping away of monumental oversight and overreach, which has been created over the last, what, we'll go back. I'll go back to Bush. Monumental oversight and overreach And it's just accumulated like scar tissue. We're 24 years deep. We're a quarter of a century deep. Actually, 23, still a quarter of a century deep from 9/11. That's a lot of scar tissue, right? That's a lot of shit built on top of an event that was incredibly traumatic and rewired the American psyche, and not really in a good way, right? So there's a lot of theoretical work to be done. There's a lot of deconstructing and dismantling with a lot of these governmental agencies and bureaucracies that is going to need to happen. And a lot of it is going to be reflected in the economy. People have been touting all the jobs that have been created. Like, well, look at the jobs numbers. Look, where those jobs came from? It was the government. They created the fucking jobs. They're like, well, we'll create jobs. We'll just build out these new umbrellas inside of DH. I tell you, I'm going to get into this in a 15 minutes flight. Alejandro Mayorkas, you better watch your fucking ass. You better watch your ass. I don't know where you plan on going. You live in Florida, but you are a man that is running around without a lot of protection right now. And look, Trump was very, very lenient with Hillary Clinton. Very lenient. I sincerely hope that leniency does not extend to people who have made our lives a living hell. I'm sorry. I know I'm a Scorpio rising, but it's the way it is. We need to have a serious discussion about Merrick Garland and Alejandro Mayorkas and Tony Fauci. And I'm sure I'm leaving some people out, but we need to have a serious discussion about these people, because there has to be some closure. Like this whole border thing and this whole immigration thing. Yeah, you could change some stuff and stem the tide, whatever. But no, there's got to be some closure. These people have created huge amounts of pain. There are people that have been raped and killed. People have lost children, right? People have lost their businesses. Like there's got to be some kind of reckoning here. There's got to be some kind of reckoning where we can have some closure. I'm not asking for Nuremberg 2.0, but come on, right? Like, the worm has turned here. One of the things that came out about the election is the silent vote. The silent vote. And the silent vote in this election apparently turned out to be women. So let's take a look at Venus. Venus in Sagittarius, right? The Sagittarius is all about the expansion of truth and authenticity. Venus represents, of course, the fairer sex. And we have Pallas here. And the lead up to the election, if we go back into early voting, Venus was behind Pallas. And Pallas is like the looking glass. Pallas gives us the ability to have pattern recognition. And I think that's the takeaway. The takeaway is that women like in 2016, the group that was unaccounted for were the Pluto and Cancer generation. Like the silent majority were the people, because they didn't tell the pollsters who they were going to vote for. And they were the secret app. And of course, we have COVID, and we have so many of our elders from that generation who, in my estimation, were targeted and taken out because they didn't want them around. There are a lot of people, Pluto and Cancer, they're still around. They're still voting. It's a generation that did not get any vaccines. They're healthy. Although some of them, unfortunately, have fallen prey to the flu scam, and a lot of them did get COVID vaxxed, right? But that was the secret app in 2016. In 2024, it was women. It was women, and they were not going to broadcast their vote, right? They were like, they didn't want to be the, the voice amongst their in crowd and say, well, I really like Donald Trump better than Kamala Harris. I really don't like Kamala. Would I want to have a glass of wine with her? Maybe, but maybe just one. After 3, she'd become insufferable. So that was the female vote, and again, Venus and Sag, right? Venus and coming in and trining Chiron in Aries, and kind of unlocking the power around that. And in as much as they were doing everything in their power to make abortion a wedge issue and get women emotionally involved in it, at the end of the day, I just don't think women liked Kamala Harris. They didn't like her. Women dealing with women in power, it's an interesting dynamic, right? It's a very interesting dynamic. There's a lot of cattiness involved sometimes when you have women in positions of power with other women. But women are the one thing we know, and we can take this to the bank every day and cash this check. Women are intuitive. They're intuitive, right? They know shit. And their intuition with Harris was probably like a 5-alarm fire, right? They knew that. That was a major, and everybody thought, like, I did the numbers. I looked at, how many women there were in the country, how many were voting age, how many were, theoretically liberal, and all Harris had to do was to command the women's vote, and then pile on top of that, and that was her path to victory. She couldn't do it. She couldn't do it because at the end of the day, she was insufferable. And most women felt this is the other part of this. This is something that you're probably not going to hear a lot about because, it's going to bust stereotypes, and it's going to really bring up, oh, well, that's just a stereotype. That's a cliche. Most women want to feel safe and secure. That's why a lot of women marry men with money, because they look at that guy and say, you know what? I can take that motherfucker to the bank, right? I mean, let's be honest here. How many women felt really safe and secure at a primal level with Kamala Harris as president? Not many. Not many. If we're talking primal level, who are women going to feel safer and more secure with? It's easy. It's Donald Trump. That's got to be 365, right? Every single day. At a fundamental archetypal level, they will identify with the stronger male versus whatever version of the female that they're going to put up in front of them. Do I feel safe with this woman? Do I feel secure? Can this woman, take care? This is really at the heart of everything that we're talking about with this election. And it's this Venus Pallas conjunction, and then this sextile with Chiron, and they're leaning into men. They leaned into Trump. He's a man, right? This is fascinating. The other part that this was a really interesting thing that I caught really early in the morning. They were talking about demographics, and they were having a come to Jesus Scorpio moment on MSNBC or CNN. I forget which one it was. They're all the same to me anyway. And they were talking, I think it was MSNBC, and they were talking about demographics. And it's like, well, the black vote may not have come through in a way that they were really hoping to. And they had this guy on there. His name is Jeh Johnson, Jeh. He was the head of Homeland Security for a while under Obama. You probably saw his picture every time he went to the fucking airport. they had him on, and he said something very interesting. He said, I think it's probably time that we started to look at demographics differently. He said, these people being blacks and Hispanics, Latinos, have been in America for a very long time. And they're not the same people that were clamoring for civil rights in 1965 with Martin Luther King. Like this is not the same demographic. And he talked about how the Latino community really came out. He says there's no such thing as the Latin vote. Like it doesn't exist. Like these people are Americans now, and they have concerns, and they have hopes and dreams and aspirations just like everybody else. Wow. Imagine that. Right. And then he included the so-called black demographic. And he said, we need to start thinking about these things differently. Holy shit. Right. Like, is that not a Scorpio look in the mirror moment? It's like the game has changed. The exploitation of the underclass, which has been the fucking, master tool of the social Marxists in this country for years, right? And they aligned it with race. That's going away, right? It is going away. This idea that, a Black American or Mexican American or Latin American, Latino American is going to represent somebody who's exploited due to their ethnicity and therefore can be moved around, manipulated, massaged, and moved into, the social Marxist camp. That's kind of over. There's so many things that happened last night that they're monumental. They're just absolutely monumental. We'll get into it over on 15 minutes, which is happening in about 11 minutes. So again, as far as the astrology goes, I'm just looking at the sun in Scorpio and the sextile with the moon and the trine with Saturn. And this ability to look in that black mirror and see what comes back in that reflection. And there are a lot of people today who are not going to like what they see. There are a lot of people that are going to have to come to the realization that they were part of the problem. And whether they were ideologically driven or somebody lined their pocketbook, whatever the reason, they were part of the problem. And the problem is the divisive and fractal ideology that has been peddled heavily since 2009. Mars is in Leo. It's such, David and I talked about this last night. This is such an amazing turn. In 2016, Trump wins and Mars goes from Capricorn to Aquarius. And I'm like, oh shit, this is going to be wild, right? This is the Mars that is going to mark the Trump administration, the Trump tenure. And I really thought that Mars in Aquarius was the kind of the revolutionary, sort of truth movement that had just literally exploded. It was incendiary, and it was around Trump. And I thought, okay, well, they're going to keep this party going. And it wasn't that. It was the revolutionary reaction to Trump that was Mars in Aquarius. And from day one, when Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton showed up, clad in purple, and the Purple Revolution was on. This is a different Mars. This is Mars in Leo. This is the sign of kings, right? This is the sign of divine rule, divine right, like royalty. This is a very different Mars. Very, very different Mars. This marks the next 4 years of whatever presidency this evolves into, whether it's the Trump presidency or the Vance presidency, right? It is marked by Mars and Leo. And it is the dawn of a new day. So anyway, I got to scoot, but we'll be back tomorrow, and we're going to get back into the star of the day, and we'll be back in our rhythm. I'll be here at 8 a.m. So I just want to thank everybody for showing up today and last night and showing up in your lives, because it is not easy. It has not been easy. And look, just because Trump got elected doesn't make it easier either, right? Like, we could have a moment, just a moment, to just thank God that we don't have to listen to that fucking cackling voice for the next 4 years, and the shit sandwiches that would have been served up every single day. We can have a day where we can give thanks for that, right? And there is a lot that is going to happen between now and January and over the course of the next 3 years. So we'll be back tomorrow, back on the case. Thank you for showing up every day in your lives. And I know for a lot of you, it's not easy. A lot of you have parents that are not doing well, and you're having to take care of them. A lot of you have had to change jobs and move, and you're having to deal with kids and their school and all the incumbent bullshit that really since 2020 we have been doing all this heavy lifting with, right? And I tip my cap to you for your courage and showing up every day and occupying your own life. And let's keep it moving. Let's keep it going forward. And I'll show up tomorrow, and we'll do it again. All right. Take care. God bless. Treat each other well. I'll see you guys hopefully over on 15. And bye for now.